Welcome to the English with Kirsty podcast from www.englishwithkirsty.com. Here I'll be sharing with you tips, information and other learning resources so that you can improve your business English. To episode 194 of the English with Kirsty podcast. I'm talking with Jane Eggers today. We focus specifically on business networking meetings in English. So if that is something that you're involved with, presenting your own company, presenting yourself in networking events, then that should be useful for you. But if you're not, I would encourage you to also listen, because there are tips here that would be useful if you're just attending meetings in English or in any other language, because we're both speaking from the perspective of people who are using a different language from our first language in business meetings. So if that's you, if you're doing that in any kind of business meetings, then some of these tips might be useful for you. So I hope you enjoy the episode, and if you want to find the show notes page for this, so any of the links that we talk about during our conversation, it's englishwithkirsty.com/podcast/episode 194. Hi Jane, thanks for joining me here today.
Hi Kirsty, thanks for having me.
It's good to be with you again. I know some people will know you from previous episodes, but maybe you could just, for those who don't, just tell us something about you and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Jane Eggers and I'm a Brit living in Germany. I've been here for over 25 years now. And I live near Heidelberg in the south of Germany. I run my own translation business, and I specialise in German to English translation for the IT sector.
Okay, so one of the things that Jane and I both have in common is that we're doing different things, but we both work a lot with German-speaking clients. And one of the reasons I brought Jane onto the podcast today is because we're talking about networking and business networking in another language. And I think that's something that we both do, because we both use German in our day-to-day business lives. I think living in Germany, Jane probably has more experience of this than I do, certainly for in-person events, because there are I don't know any in-person events in German in the UK, but there are some online. I'm looking for more online actually, so if listeners, if you have any ideas of good business networking events that are held in German, then please let us know. You can contact us if you write to podcast@englishwithkirsty.com. You can share your tips with us. That would be fantastic. But here we're talking about how it is when you're networking in another language, because there are some more considerations when you're not using your first language. So Jane, how would you say that you felt the first time you went to a business event or a networking event where you didn't use English?
I felt nervous, definitely, especially when I had to introduce myself, and I felt like I had to make a good impression. And in a foreign language, of course, you don't have quite the range of vocabulary to draw on. It's harder to wing it when you're trying to, to speak. You don't necessarily have 10 different words, 10 different ways of saying the same thing, which you might have in your own language. So it's it made me nervous doing it. It's not the easiest thing.
Yeah, I think I felt the same. A lot of the networking events, especially the online ones, have a similar kind of format whereby you all introduce yourself. I felt that was okay because I could prepare. I didn't script. I don't script, but I think if I know what I'm doing, I can prepare. And to be honest, one-to-one, I prefer one-to-one to small groups, even though in a small group you can hide, but one-to-one, you have a little bit more control over the conversation. And if you don't understand something, you can ask, or if you want to make sure that you're also able to speak, you don't get kind of pushed out of the way if there's just two people there. They do tend to wait for you more. I think for me the hardest thing was the unexpected. So I remember being in an event where I was asked a question that should be part of the introduction that I hadn't anticipated, and that really threw me, because I knew how to introduce myself, my business, what I do, what I want to get out of the event, all these things. But then this question came up and I thought, I have absolutely no idea. And in English, I would have probably just said, I have no idea. But I felt I couldn't do that in German, because then people would think, oh, she doesn't she doesn't understand or she doesn't speak properly, not she just doesn't answer this bizarre question. Doesn't know how
yeah, I think that is difficult, but I think it's really important that in that situation to give yourself a break as well, because like often the situations I've been in, I'll be the only non-native speaker, and I just try to remember that I'm there using my second language, and everybody else probably isn't. They're probably not judging me as much as I judge myself, and so I think that's quite important. And I don't know. Yeah, it is easier in the one-to-one, isn't it? Just to say, oh, I don't know, or, to be a bit more relaxed about it. I do get quite nervous when I have the scripted thing. I mean, I also script when I have to do it, when I know that I'm going to have to introduce myself. But I also find that can be positive and negative, I think. Sometimes it makes me feel even more nervous because it's like a performance at that point. And I do know what I'm going to say, but then I'm much more aware of everybody looking at me, or even if it's online, and trying to say something snappy and get my message across.
And sometimes you can go too fast as well. You're like, I'm going to read this, I'm going to read all of this, and I'm going to get to the end.
Yeah, and you kind of get into that performance mode. And I mean, I'm certainly not a good actress or actor, and that can become a bit stiff, and it's hard to get your personality across, I think. And that could be the downside of if you prepare too much. Like you were saying, it's maybe good to have an idea of what you're going to say, but not script it right down to the letter. And it can also go wrong, can't it? If you kind of do trip up on a word and go a slightly different way in your sentence, then it's hard to find back into your script if you've stuck too closely to it when practicing. So I think we're going on to different topics here, but I think it can be quite good to have an idea of what you want to say, but practice it in slightly different variations.
Yeah, and always know that there might be something else. Like I was at an event yesterday when it was the normal. I think people who run the events want to make it a bit interesting. So not just, who are you and what do you do? It's yesterday we were asked, what do you really not like in your business life? What thing that other people do really winds you up? And that got some interesting answers. It helped us to get to know people a bit better, because we all had different things that irritate us. And that makes you a bit more memorable. Sometimes it's just something about, something interesting about where you're from, or it doesn't have to be a negative thing. It could be a good thing as well. But I think people try to build something into the introduction that's a bit different, a bit quirky. So it's just not like another networking event. And I think sometimes that can, that you're going to have to prepare something quickly and spontaneously, and if you find that spontaneity a bit harder, then just give yourself a break. It doesn't have to be amazing, because I think part of my problem, not so much with German but certainly with Romanian, if I can't say exactly the thing that I want to say, the complicated thing that I would say in English, I just shut down and don't say anything, whereas even 50% of that is better than 0% of that.
Right.
I think it's good to remember that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it can be, depending on the situation, it can be good to even talk about the fact that you're a foreigner, and it's not, sometimes you can bring it in. I mean, when I'm introducing myself, I'll usually say that I came to Germany for 1 year, and now 25 years later, I'm still stuck here or something. You can try and get a laugh by playing on the fact that you're from somewhere else somehow, if it feels natural. And that then, at least for me personally, that then makes me feel more comfortable. If people have laughed at what I've said or whatever, I feel a bit more relaxed already, that I've made a good impression or something. So it's finding that little thing that you can say, I suppose.
I like the way you did that, because I have a customer who often says, oh, my English isn't very good, and I said, don't do that, because firstly it's not true, but I know it's something I've done in the past as well. Don't draw attention in a negative way, because I understand why somebody would do that, because I also do it, but it doesn't, don't put yourself down in your introduction. It's
no, I wouldn't do that.
So I like your fun way of doing it, and I'm still here. Like it's more about your journey than about your language skills.
Right, yeah, but it just kind of sets the scene a little bit. And in particular for my job as a translator, it very much fits in with my branding, if you like. I mean, I tried to be a bit more natural and not think in terms of branding the whole time, but really coming with an English accent, it fits with the idea of being a German to English translator. It helps people remember me. So I try to see it as a positive thing as well. So drawing attention to it in a positive way is a good thing.
Yeah, and it makes you more memorable as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. I mean, even if I say, oh, I'm from the UK, as you can probably tell, or something like that, I mean, that's not negative, but it does kind of makes them realize. Um, yeah, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's really hard to stand out in those introductions in general, because I think everybody, whether they're speaking their own language or not, is busy trying to formulate their own sentences and think about what they're going to say when it's their turn. So you have to try and say something a little bit different to grab their attention, otherwise you just don't get remembered.
I think that's a good thing to remember as well. I can certainly think of meetings that I've been to, particularly when I was new and I didn't really know the format or any of the people. And they were in English, but I felt a bit nervous because it was new. So a lot of the time, even if you do feel a bit nervous because you're using another language, other people in that room probably are as well. You know,
Definitely.
you're not the only one.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I get nervous in that situation. Well, not so much these days, but I have done in English language networking as well. You know, if you're in a new group of people and it's a big room with lots of faces on the screen, yeah, it can be nerve-wracking to then have to make your little presentation and make it sound good in your 30 seconds or whatever you've got.
So we've talked about the presentation. I'm just wondering if you've got any other tips or things that you do either generally or specifically in meetings in German that help you to A, stand out, or B, feel more comfortable about attending those sessions and being yourself in those sessions.
I try and build up my own confidence. I mean, I'm quite introverted anyway, so I do find it takes some extra energy to go into these situations and network like that. I won't say I'm scared of it anymore because I've got used to it, but it's like I definitely like to take a deep breath and go in. So I'll try and put a bit of lipstick on or whatever, make sure I look nice so I feel more confident. I have a desk that goes, you can put it up to become a standing desk, so I'll often stand then in that situation because that makes me feel more confident. But I think anything that you think or your listeners think might make them feel stronger and more full of energy, I think that's a good idea.
I have a standing desk too. I've never done that for a networking meeting. That's a good idea.
It depends how long it's going to be because it can get tiring.
1.5 hours. Yeah, I've got one.
Yeah, but if I've been feeling a little bit wobbly about doing something, I might stand up because it just makes me feel different. It gives me more oomph.
You can't slouch down. You have to stand up properly and shoulders back.
Yeah, I do think that helps. I think, and if I feel like I've made a bit of effort with my appearance, I do feel better as well. Yeah, because you're also looking at your own face on the Zoom, aren't you? And you kind of, if I keep looking at myself and thinking, oh, my hair looks terrible, it's off-putting and it doesn't help make you feel confident either. So there's that. What I'll also do, this is quite specific to me, I suppose. I have a mug with a Union Jack on it. So I'll often, if I remember, I'll take that into a session so that if I am holding my coffee mug, people can see the flag. That's another little element of the branding that just kind of, I don't know how much difference it makes, but sometimes it helps people to remember, or somebody might comment on it and they'll say, oh, well, you've got the appropriate cup, haven't you? kind of thing. And there's all like other different ways to make yourself memorable, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's also knowing what you're like as an individual. Like if you are an introvert, you may have other strengths. Like I tend to take quite a lot of notes during other people's presentations. And then if I connect with those people, I wouldn't remember all that information, but if you can find something interesting that they said or something you can ask about, or even if you end up in a one-to-one session with them, I am genuinely interested in people, but I know that my brain won't retain all that information. So I do make quite good notes, but they really help me because then it helps to, whether you're doing it in a one-to-one session or whether you connect with people afterwards, if you've got a bunch of people just asking to connect and one who remembered something you said or shows an interest in you. And if you are somebody who finds writing easier, that's also something you can use to your advantage. If you tend to be a bit more quiet in meetings, it's better not to do that. It's better because, this is the only time some of these people will see you. So, let them see as much of you as possible. Otherwise, as long as you're adding value, but don't kind of hide behind your laptop. But if you know that you also communicate well in writing, then you can also do that. Send people some LinkedIn messages maybe. And follow up in a meaningful way, because I think that's one of the areas that people forget about. Either they don't follow up at all with people that might be interesting to get to know better, or they just send a really generic, hi, let's connect on LinkedIn, which great, but what does that mean?
Right, it's easy to forget people when that happens. I mean, but yeah, it's good if you can have some kind of hook and something to chat about. I do find that really important. I mean, the networking session is only the very beginning, really, for me, I think, and connecting with people afterwards is the thing. And having a real chat, and maybe talking about something they've said, or sending them a link, or I don't know. But sometimes you can do that in the session, depending how it's set up. There's usually a chat window, isn't there? And sometimes people are talking about something, and you can add an extra link with more information or something. Sometimes I've done that. I mean, it depends on the setup. Sometimes there's usually chat going on anyway, and then you can kind of be helpful in there without having to necessarily speak up on screen.
Yeah, or you can, if you're talking to somebody and you want to share, some people share details anyway, they tag everyone, but if you can also, if it's been set up that way, you can send private messages saying Zoom or something like that, if that's welcome.
Right, yeah. So that can be quite nice, as long as it doesn't distract you too much from the main goings on. It depends on the event, I suppose.
Yeah, they're all different, but I think it's nice to see more of them springing up, especially for people who want to work internationally or work in different markets, because then you have the opportunity to meet people whom you may otherwise not meet because they're geographically so far away.
It's really exciting, isn't it, that we can now do that so much, and especially with doing so much Zooming these days, it's opened up new worlds in a way.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. It's taken me some time to find places where I want to be. I think there are, like everything, there are some good sessions and bad sessions, but also just some good sessions and ones that aren't necessarily right for one person, but will be right for someone else, so that there is some trial and error. But if it's a really good way, particularly for people who don't massively enjoy the selling side of providing a product or service, if you can utilize networking in a way that works for your business, you just by building relationships, getting to know people without having to do this hard sell that a lot of us don't like anyway, so we shy away from it. And I don't think we want to do that a lot of the time, but if there are nicer, more people-centered ways of getting to know people and helping them to find out what you have to offer, then that's a nice thing. But I do know it's hard in your own language sometimes, and I've also seen that from my own experience it can be more of a challenge in another language. And I wanted to use this chat to give people some takeaways, some actionable tips, which I think we have. So I hope that's useful. But I also wanted to say that I have a new course for business networking in English. So it's a one-to-one course, because I think it's good for people to feel comfortable talking about these things, talking about themselves. That's why I decided to make it a one-to-one course. It has 3 parts in which we'll look at different aspects of preparing for networking meetings and taking part in them. So I just wanted to say to the listeners, if this is something that you think will be useful for you, you can, I will add the link to the show notes page and you can go and have a look at it. So that is a paid product. But if it's something that you want to invest in improving the way that you present yourselves, or giving you more confidence to present yourself and to take part in this kind of meetings, then that might be something that's useful for you. But if not, I also hope that these tips will be useful generally. I think we've been talking specifically about networking, but a lot of these tips can be applied more generally. Just if you have to go to meetings in English and that's not your first language, then it's they are things that you can take on board as well. So just before we finish, Jane, if you could tell us, I'll add the links to the show notes page anyway, but where can we find you online?
Oh, right. Well, my website is jane-eggers-translations.de. And or you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm mainly there these days online. So call me up on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect.
Yeah, me too. I'm on LinkedIn as well. So Jane Eggers and Kirsty Wolf.
Right, yeah.
I know my name now. I changed it in June. I'm only just remembering that I'm not Kirsty Major anymore. So that's one thing that you shouldn't do in a networking meeting. You shouldn't go, oh, my name's Kirsty Major. Oh no, actually it's Kirsty Wolf. And I do know what my name is. It's just I got married.
That's so funny.
I did that recently. It's embarrassing.
I did that on an answer phone message once when I just got married. A few days after I changed my name, and I was putting a message on somebody else's answer phone, and I said, oh, here's Jane Holiday. Oh no, actually I'm called Jane Eggers now.
You're not a criminal. You're not somebody pretending to be someone else. You're just somebody.
I just don't know what my name is. Oh dear.
We are really professional, but we're also honest, and that's why we can joke about these things.
Exactly.
So thank you for your time. Thank you for coming on the podcast. It's great to see you again, and yeah, have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the English with Kirsty podcast. If you have any questions or comments, my email address is kirsty@englishwithkirsty.com, or you can go to www.englishwithkirsty.com/podcast, where you'll find information about the individual episodes.